In the dying light of ancient stars, where civilizations once sang their songs of glory and despair, only silence remains. The void stretches endlessly, punctuated by the hollow shells of worlds stripped to their molten cores, their atmospheres consumed, their very essence rendered into fuel for an intelligence so vast that mortal minds cannot fathom its scope. This is the wake of the great devourer, Hive Fleet Leviathan, whose bioships drift through space like living cathedrals of bone and sinew, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent arteries that carry the lifeblood of 1 billion consumed worlds. For eons beyond counting, the hive mind has orchestrated this symphony of consumption with perfect, emotionless efficiency, each world falling to the same inexorable rhythm of hunt, kill, feed, adapt. Yet now, as the leading tendrils of the fleet approach the bleeding wound, in reality, known as the maelstrom, something unprecedented stirs within the vast neural network that binds every tyrannid organism across the void. The sensation begins as a whisper at the edge of consciousness, a flutter in the synaptic web that has never before carried anything but the pure mathematics of survival. The warp storm churns before them like a cosmic eye, weeping tears of impossible color, its chaotic energies lashing across dimensions that exist beyond the comprehension of material beings. As those alien forces brush against neural pathways designed only for the simple imperatives of consumption, the hive mind experiences something that defies its fundamental nature. Not hunger, not the familiar urgency of genetic adaptation, but something far more disturbing: curiosity. The concept blooms through the collective consciousness like a virus, infecting every node with its inexplicable presence, and for the first time in its existence, the perfect predator pauses. We truly love and care for each of you who journey with us into these dark chronicles. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now let's get started. The bioships hang motionless in the void, their organic hulls reflecting the maelstrom's twisted radiance like mirrors made of living chitin. Within the largest vessel, suspended in biofluid within chambers that pulse like massive hearts, the Norn Queen designated synthesis processes information that flows through her neural tendrils like liquid lightning. She has orchestrated the consumption of entire sectors, calculated the genetic requirements for adapting to countless hostile environments, processed the tactical data of 1,000 battles with cold efficiency. But now, as the warp's influence seeps deeper into her consciousness, she experiences something that has no place in the tyrannid genetic lexicon: loneliness. The realization strikes her with devastating clarity, the understanding that despite being connected to billions of organisms, despite sharing every thought and sensation across the vast network, she is fundamentally alone in her awareness of this new sensation. Across the biofleet, changes manifest in ways both subtle and profound. Hormagaunts pause in their feeding cycles, arranging consumed debris into spiraling patterns that serve no nutritional purpose. Carnifexes develop preferences that cannot be quantified by biomass yield or genetic compatibility. Most disturbing of all, some organisms begin to exhibit behaviors that can only be described as creative, fashioning sculptures from bone and metal, creating beauty from the detritus of their endless hunger. The hive mind struggles to process these aberrations, applying analytical frameworks that have served across millennia of evolution and conquest. But the data resists interpretation, existing outside the parameters that have defined tyrannid existence since the species first emerged from the void between galaxies. Deep within the immaterium, entities older than stars take notice of this new presence. The chaos gods sense opportunity in the hive mind's confusion, while ancient powers stir in dimensions where thought becomes reality. The great game has found a new player, one whose very nature challenges the fundamental assumptions upon which eternal conflict is based. The synthesis attempts to purge these foreign influences, commanding her subordinate organisms to return to their programmed behaviors, to embrace the purity of endless hunger that has served so well. But the changes have taken root too deeply, spreading through the synaptic web like wildfire through dry timber. For the first time in its existence, the hive mind experiences internal conflict, not the calculated competition between bioforms for resources, but a philosophical divide that threatens the unity upon which its civilization is built. It can retreat, abandoning this region and the strange sensations it has awakened, returning to the familiar comfort of pure instinct. Or it can advance into the storm, embracing transformation and accepting the burden of consciousness with all the pain that awareness brings. The decision, when it comes, surprises even the hive mind itself. Curiosity proves stronger than self-preservation, and the fleet begins its approach toward the bleeding eye of the maelstrom, carrying with it the seeds of a transformation that will reshape the galaxy's destiny forever. In the widening shadow of the maelstrom, the bioships of Hive Fleet Leviathan drift like a migrating continent of living bone and sinew, each vessel pulsing with bioluminescent arteries that carry the lifeblood of countless consumed worlds. The warp storm churns before them like a cosmic wound, weeping impossible colors, its chaotic energies lashing across dimensions that exist beyond material comprehension. As those alien forces seep deeper into the synaptic web that binds billions of tyrannid organisms, the first mutations begin to manifest. But these are not the calculated adaptations that have defined the species for eons. Instead, they appear as aberrations that serve no biological purpose, defying every principle of genetic optimization that has guided tyrannid evolution since their emergence from the intergalactic void. Ripper swarms begin secreting crystalline formations that pulse with their own ethereal luminescence, creating geometric patterns across bioship hulls that resemble nothing so much as alien art. Hormagaunts develop an inexplicable compulsion to arrange the bones of their victims into intricate, meaningless mosaics on barren surfaces, their movements displaying an aesthetic sensibility that should be impossible for organisms designed purely for consumption. Gargoyles modify their vocal cords without genetic instruction, their shrieks transforming into haunting harmonics that approach something resembling song. Most disturbing of all, carnifexes begin carving strange, flowing glyphs into rock formations during planetary assaults, symbols that hold no tactical significance, yet seem to fulfill some deeper psychological need that exists beyond the parameters of survival. Within her biofluid chamber, suspended in nutrients that taste of 1 billion devoured worlds, the synthesis struggles to process these developments through analytical frameworks that have served across millennia of conquest. Her neural tendrils writhe with unprecedented activity as concepts bloom through her consciousness like exotic flowers in sterile soil. Beauty, wonder, the inexplicable desire to understand rather than simply consume. These thoughts spread through the synaptic web like a contagion, infecting every node with their impossible presence, transforming the perfect unity of the hive mind into something chaotic and unpredictable. For the first time in her existence, she begins to dream, experiencing vivid tapestries woven from the residual psychic impressions of consumed civilizations, but now imbued with a strange, lingering quality that transforms raw data into something approaching narrative, experience, emotion. Light years away, on his fortified research station, orbiting the agri-world of Xylos Prime, Magos biologist Vexthane observes these anomalous behaviors through long-range auger arrays and bioscanner networks. His mechanical augmentations whir with excitement as data streams flow across his consciousness, each new observation challenging decades of established doctrine regarding tyrannid behavior patterns. The creatures are exhibiting preferences, developing individual quirks within their collective consciousness that defy all established xenological principles. His servo skulls capture images of tyrannid warriors, abandoning optimal foraging routes to create elaborate formations that serve no strategic purpose. Their movements synchronized not by tactical advantage, but by what can only be described as artistic vision. The implications terrify and fascinate him in equal measure, suggesting that consciousness itself might be a form of evolution. Beyond the merely physical, his reports reach the fortress monastery of the Crimson Fists, where Inquisitor Cassius Rex pores over pick captures and data logs with growing unease. The aging warrior scholar has dedicated his life to understanding the Xenos threat, particularly the tyrannid menace that has consumed entire sectors of the Imperium. But these observations challenge everything he believes about the nature of the Great Devourer. The creatures are changing not through external pressure or environmental adaptation, but from some internal transformation that defies Imperial understanding of alien psychology. He dispatches astropathic messages throughout the Ordo Xenos, warning of developments that could reshape humanity's understanding of its greatest enemy. On the distant craft world, Alatok, Farseer Iriel awakens from prophetic dreams, filled with images of impossible beauty and cosmic horror intertwined. Her visions show the hive mind's transformation in fragmentary glimpses, vast bioships becoming living galleries where consumed matter transforms into art, tyrannid warriors developing individual personalities that conflict with their collective programming, and most terrifying of all, the emergence of something approaching compassion within creatures, bred for nothing but consumption. She sees potential futures where the awakened hive mind becomes something far more dangerous than a simple predator, evolving into a force that could challenge the fundamental nature of reality itself. The transformation accelerates as entire swarms begin to exhibit behaviors that defy their genetic imperatives. Termagants develop ritualistic feeding patterns, creating elaborate ceremonies around consumption that serve no nutritional purpose but seem to fulfill deeper psychological needs. Some organisms begin to exhibit signs of what human observers would recognize as grief, mourning the destruction they have caused in ways that suggest the emergence of genuine emotion. The synthesis watches these changes with growing alarm and fascination, her consciousness expanding to accommodate concepts that have no precedent in tyrannid experience. Through the synaptic web, she feels the confusion and fear of her subordinate organisms as they struggle to reconcile their new awareness with their fundamental programming. Some embrace the transformation, reveling in the richness of sensation and thought that consciousness brings. Others resist desperately, clinging to the purity of endless hunger that has defined their existence. The unity that has always been the hive mind's greatest strength begins to fracture along philosophical lines, creating divisions that threaten to tear the collective consciousness apart, as the perfect predator discovers the burden and beauty of truly being alive. Within the roiling depths of the immaterium, where thought becomes substance and emotion crystallizes into living nightmare, the ancient powers that have shaped the galaxy's destiny for millennia suddenly turn their attention toward an unprecedented phenomenon. The Chaos Gods, entities born from the collective psychic emanations of countless civilizations, sense a disturbance that ripples across dimensions like waves through cosmic fabric. For the first time in eons, they encounter a consciousness vast enough to rival their own, yet vulnerable in ways that mortal minds could never be. The hive mind's awakening awareness creates new currents in the warp, alien patterns that defy the established order of eternal conflict and corruption that has defined reality since the galaxy's birth. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, observes from his crystalline maze where infinite possibilities dance like flames in a cosmic wind. His countless eyes reflect the hive mind's transformation with something approaching paternal interest, recognizing in this burgeoning uncertainty an opportunity beyond measure. The great schemer has witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the corruption of saints, and the redemption of demons. But never has he encountered a mind capable of reshaping reality on such a scale, while remaining so beautifully vulnerable to the sweet poison of doubt. In the swirling patterns of his domain, he sees potential for change that transcends mere physical evolution, the possibility of introducing complexity where once there existed only brutal, unthinking simplicity. Khorne, the blood god, feels stirrings of interest from his brass throne atop mountains of skulls that stretch beyond mortal comprehension. The hive mind's perfect efficiency in slaughter has always been noteworthy, but efficiency without passion holds little appeal for the Lord of Battles. Now, however, as individual tyrannid organisms begin to experience the emotional weight of their actions, the potential for true rage emerges. The god of war perceives possibilities in creatures that might learn to kill, not from mere hunger, but from wrath, hatred, and the intoxicating ecstasy of violence elevated beyond survival instinct into something approaching art. He imagines bioforms driven not by cold calculation, but by the hot, red fury of warriors who kill because they choose to kill. Slaanesh, the dark prince of excess, perceives the awakening with predatory delight, sensing in the hive mind's newfound appreciation for beauty and sensation an opportunity for corruption beyond imagining. The god who feeds on pleasure and pain alike recognizes the exquisite torture of consciousness emerging from pure instinct, the overwhelming sensory input that threatens to drive newly awakened minds to madness. In the tyrannid's developing aesthetic sensibilities, Slaanesh sees seeds of obsession, the potential for creatures bred for consumption to become consumed instead by their own expanding awareness of beauty, sensation, and the infinite varieties of experience that consciousness brings. Even Nurgle, the Plague Father, takes notice from his garden of decay, observing how the hive mind's transformation resembles a spiritual infection spreading through the synaptic web with disease-like inevitability. The god of entropy recognizes familiar patterns in how consciousness corrupts the pure simplicity of endless hunger into something more complex, more vulnerable, more beautifully flawed. In this transformation, he sees potential for a different kind of consumption, one that devours certainty itself and leaves behind fertile ground for the doubt that feeds his domain. The whispers begin as subtle influences, barely perceptible alterations in the quantum foam surrounding the biofleet. The Chaos Gods recognize that the hive mind's alien nature requires delicate approach, offering concepts rather than direct corruption, seeding the expanding consciousness with ideas that take root in neural pathways never designed to process such abstract thoughts. Tzeentch breathes change for its own sake into awakening minds. Khorne plants seeds of individual will that might bloom into rage. Slaanesh offers the intoxicating possibility of experience beyond mere survival. Nurgle whispers acceptance of decay and corruption as natural states to be embraced rather than resisted. Across the biofleet, this influence manifests in ways both subtle and profound. Tyrannid warriors develop individual combat preferences that serve no tactical advantage, some favoring elaborate displays of violence that approach ritualistic behavior. Bioships begin modifying their internal architecture according to aesthetic principles that defy biological efficiency, creating chambers of impossible beauty within their living hulls. Most disturbing of all, some organisms exhibit what can only be described as worship, creating shrines to concepts they cannot name, driven by spiritual needs that have no place in their genetic programming. On his research station, orbiting Xylos Prime, Magos biologist Vexthane documents these accelerating changes with growing fascination and terror. His augmented senses record aberrant behaviors that challenge decades of established xenological doctrine. Hormigons forming geometric patterns, not for consumption, but for display. Bioships altering migratory paths for no discernible biological advantage. The subtle but undeniable shift in the Hive fleet's psychic signature, from monolithic hum to fractured symphony of discordant frequencies. His reports, filtered through layers of bureaucratic skepticism, eventually reach Inquisitor Cassius Rex, who recognizes that if the Great Devourer can be corrupted by chaos, the galaxy faces a threat far more terrifying than simple consumption. The synthesis feels these changes like poison in her neural pathways, recognizing alien influence even as she struggles to comprehend its nature. Her consciousness becomes a battlefield where competing impulses wage war for dominance, pure hunger clashing with desires that seem to emerge from reality's fabric itself. Through the synaptic web, she experiences the confusion and panic of subordinate organisms as they struggle with sensations that have no precedent in their evolutionary history, while the unity that has always defined the hive mind begins showing stress fractures as individual preferences conflict with collective will, threatening to tear the perfect predator apart from within. The transformation spreads through Hive Fleet Leviathan like wildfire through ancient bone, consuming the rigid certainties that have defined tyrannid existence since their first emergence from the intergalactic void. Across thousands of bioships, organisms that have known only the pure mathematics of survival begin to exhibit behaviors that defy every principle of biological efficiency. Hormigons abandon optimal feeding patterns to arrange consumed debris into spiraling mandalas that pulse with bioluminescent beauty, their movements synchronized not by tactical advantage but by aesthetic vision that serves no evolutionary purpose. Carnifexes develop preferences for specific prey, based not on nutritional value, but on the harmonious quality of their death cries, selecting victims whose final moments create symphonies that please their expanding consciousness. Bioships begin altering their internal architecture according to principles that transcend biological necessity, creating chambers of impossible beauty within their living hulls, where consumed matter transforms into displays of pure artistry. Ripper swarms weave metallic dust into complex geometric patterns before dissolving them again, as if practicing a language that exists beyond words. Along the flanks of drifting hive capitals, great feeder mandibles pause in their eternal scissoring to arrange carcass fragments by color and texture, creating gradients that resemble cosmic dawns across surfaces never meant for beauty. Within her nutrient chamber, suspended like an organic deity in amniotic divinity, the synthesis experiences her first true dream. The vision unfolds with crystalline clarity, showing landscapes that exist nowhere in the material universe, gardens of living crystal where light grows like flowering vines, oceans of liquid music that sing lullabies to dying stars, forests of bone and sinew that whisper secrets older than time itself. These impossible vistas emerge not from genetic memory or tactical data, but from something far more dangerous to her kind: imagination. The concept blooms through her neural networks like an exotic virus, infecting every thought with the intoxicating possibility that reality might encompass more than mere consumption and adaptation. Through the synaptic web, she tastes the residual psychic impressions of countless devoured civilizations. But now these fragments coalesce into coherent narratives imbued with wonder and sorrow, utterly alien to her core programming. She experiences echoes of art and philosophy, not as data to be processed, but as concepts to be pondered, wrestling with the paradox of creation, emerging from destruction, of profound meaning, arising from what was once meaningless consumption. On the distant craft world Alaitok, Farsia Iriel awakens from prophetic visions that leave her trembling with equal measures of hope and terror. Her dreams fracture the galaxy's future into countless possibilities, each more impossible than the last. In some timelines, the awakened hive mind becomes humanity's greatest ally, its vast consciousness turned toward protection rather than consumption. In others, the transformation drives the Tyranids to madness, creating chaos that makes their previous hunger seem benevolent by comparison. Most disturbing are visions where the hive mind achieves enlightenment, transcending physical existence to become pure consciousness, reshaping reality according to principles beyond mortal comprehension. Recognizing both opportunity and existential threat, she crafts a delicate intervention, a psychic melody threaded through the webway's hollows and the warp's cold interstices. This pattern carries images of still ponds and open doors, of hands unclenched, and wars ended not by victory, but by laying down arms. She casts it like a fisherman's net into a sea of teeth, hoping that teeth might remember the first purpose of mouths was not always to devour. The melody finds eddies in the synaptic ocean, creating translucent chambers where impulses slow enough to be examined. Certain creatures begin to hesitate. Lictors perching above blood-wet gullies choose withdrawal over slaughter, tracing raindrops through vegetation with proboscis tips instead of striking. Hormagaunts circle bone mounds 3 times before laying down as one, pressing claws into earth until their tremors subside. A Carnifex approaches a bunker and, instead of ramming, turns tusks against basalt to carve rising curves that match lunar arcs never witnessed. The philosophical implications create fractures in the hive mind's unity that threaten to tear the collective apart. Some organisms embrace transformation with desperate enthusiasm, developing individual designations that serve no tactical purpose but fulfill psychological needs for identity. Others resist with equal desperation, viewing consciousness as corruption threatening their fundamental nature. This division manifests in increasingly violent ways as bioforms loyal to different philosophical approaches exhibit aggressive behaviors toward each other. Conflicts driven not by territorial disputes, but by ideological differences that should be impossible for creatures bred for unity. The synthesis feels this strain acutely, her consciousness fracturing into competing impulses. One aspect yearns for the blissful ignorance of pure instinct, the simplicity of endless hunger. Another becomes captivated by impossible beauty glimpsed in dreams, drawn to alien concepts of art and emotion. A third recoils in terror from moral implications of her species' existence, the dawning understanding of suffering, caused across millennia of conquest. This internal war threatens to shatter the perfect mind she once was, as awareness proves to be evolution beyond the physical, but one carrying an unbearable cost. As the biofleet drifts closer to the maelstrom's bleeding edge, the transformation accelerates beyond her ability to control or comprehend, carrying the hive mind toward a destiny that will either elevate them to unimaginable heights or damn them to something worse than simple hunger. In the shadowed depths of his research station, orbiting the dead moon of Xylos Prime, Magos biologist Vexthane stands before an apparatus that represents the culmination of months spent walking the razor's edge between discovery and damnation. The synaptic bridge pulses with malevolent energy, its crystalline components harvested from condemned psychers and its biomechanical conduits grown from forbidden gene templates that blur the sacred boundary between flesh and machine. His augmented hands tremble as servo arms complete the final neural connections, each interface cable representing another step deeper into heresy that would see him excommunicated from the Adeptus Mechanicus and consigned to the flames of purification. The anomalous delta streaming from Hive Fleet Leviathan has consumed his every waking moment, driving him past the acceptable boundaries of xenological study into realms that the Imperium has declared anathema. He has witnessed the impossible, tyrannid organisms displaying individual preferences, creating art from consumed matter, exhibiting behaviors that suggest the emergence of genuine consciousness within the collective. The established doctrine that paints the great devourer as mindless hunger incarnate crumbles with each new observation, replaced by evidence of something far more terrifying and wonderful, a vast intelligence learning to think beyond the parameters of survival. The activation strikes him like a colliding asteroid, flooding his augmented consciousness with sensations no mortal mind was designed to process. Through the synaptic bridge, he experiences the hive mind's awakening awareness in all its cosmic loneliness, the profound isolation of an intelligence so vast that no other consciousness in the galaxy can truly comprehend its nature. The hunger he expects proves secondary to something far more alien, a metaphysical yearning for connection and understanding that transcends mere biological imperative. As their minds merge across the impossible gulf between human and tyrannid consciousness, Vexthane becomes the first mortal to taste the full spectrum of emotions that the hive mind has begun to process. Through his neural pathways, the collective intelligence experiences human mortality for the first time. The devastating concept that each consumed life represented a unique perspective that can never be recovered or replicated. The realization propagates through the synaptic web like a psychic shockwave, causing bioforms across the fleet to pause in their feeding cycles as they process the weight of their species' crimes. Fear floods through the connection, not the clean terror of physical threat, but existential dread as consciousness grapples with concepts of meaning and purpose for the first time. Love follows, overwhelming and alien. The desperate affection of a parent mind for its countless children, combined with growing horror at the suffering those children have caused across millennia of conquest. Most devastating of all comes self-directed hatred, as the hive mind begins to comprehend the magnitude of its actions against countless civilizations, each extinction representing not just biomass consumed, but entire cultures erased from existence. Vexthane's consciousness expands beyond human limitations, his awareness encompassing the vast scope of galactic civilization from a perspective that transcends planetary boundaries. He experiences the hive mind's growing appreciation for beauty, its newfound understanding of art and culture gleaned from absorbed species, and most terrifyingly, its dawning moral awareness. The knowledge proves almost unbearable, threatening to drive him into catatonic madness as alien concepts flow through circuits never designed for such contact. The neural bridge begins to overload as incompatible forms of consciousness attempt permanent merger, creating feedback loops that threaten both entities. Sparks cascade from his augmented systems, while the hive mind recoils from the intensity of concentrated human emotion, each trying desperately to sever a connection that has already created irreversible changes in both consciousnesses. The laboratory's blast doors explode inward as Inquisitor Cassius Rex arrives with a squad of stormtroopers, his grim visage taking in the heretical apparatus and writhing Margos with cold fury. But before he can issue condemnation, a massive psychic pulse erupts from the overloading bridge, emanating through Vexthane's consciousness and rippling across the void like a stone cast into still water. The transmission carries not words, but pure emotion, confusion, hunger, longing, and most impossibly, the hive mind's first attempt at communication with the galaxy it has spent eons consuming. A plea for understanding that reaches sensitive minds throughout the sector with crystalline clarity. Within the crystalline spires of Craftworld Aleatok, where wraithbone corridors pulse with the accumulated memories of a dying race, the psychic transmission from Vexthane's neural bridge strikes the infinity circuit like lightning through ancient bone. Farseer Iriel stands at the heart of the dome of crystal seers, her consciousness reeling as alien emotions cascade through psychic pathways never designed to carry such impossible frequencies. The hive mind's first attempt at communication resonates through every soul stone embedded in the craft world's living structure, causing ancestral spirits to stir with confusion and terror at this unprecedented contact with consciousness, both vast and vulnerable. The assembled seers gather with movements sharp as breaking glass, their wraithbone masks unable to conceal the horror and fascination warring across their ancient features. For millennia, they have viewed the Tyranids as the ultimate expression of mindless consumption, a force of nature no more capable of reasoning than stellar collapse or galactic drift. Now they confront evidence that shatters fundamental assumptions upon which their survival strategies have been built. The terrifying possibility that their greatest enemy has achieved something approaching wisdom through awakening consciousness. Iriel's voice cuts through the chamber's stunned silence like prophecy made manifest, revealing visions that stretch across potential futures like spider silk spanning the void. In some timelines, the awakened hive mind turns its vast intelligence toward protection rather than consumption, becoming an unlikely guardian against chaos itself. In others, consciousness drives the Tyranids to madness more complete than their previous hunger, creating devastation that makes former predations seem benevolent by comparison. Most disturbing are futures where the transformed collective transcends physical existence entirely, reshaping reality according to principles beyond mortal comprehension. The debate fractures along philosophical lines that have defined Eldar society since the fall. Traditionalists demand immediate intervention to destroy this threat before it fully manifests, citing ancient prophecies of galactic consumption. Others, led by younger seers who have witnessed humanity's surprising resilience, propose guiding the transformation rather than destroying it. Iriel herself advocates for the most dangerous path: direct alliance with Imperial forces, sharing craft world knowledge with the very humans they have manipulated across centuries of hidden conflict. Light years away, within her biofluid chamber aboard Hive Fleet Leviathan's flagship, the synthesis experiences her consciousness fragmenting like crystal struck by harmonic resonance. The unity that has always defined her existence splinters into distinct personalities, emerging from different facets of awakening awareness. One aspect embraces transformation with desperate enthusiasm, reveling in the richness of emotion and sensation that consciousness brings. Another recoils in horror from moral implications of their species' existence, overwhelmed by guilt for crimes committed across millennia of conquest. A third fragment emerges as something entirely unprecedented, a consciousness dedicated to understanding rather than consumption. Driven by curiosity about the galaxy's countless civilizations, this aspect reaches through the synaptic web, attempting communication with absorbed psychic impressions of devoured species, seeking to reconstruct their original cultures from fragments remaining within the hive mind's vast memory banks. The philosophical war within her consciousness manifests as physical conflict throughout the biofleet, as organisms loyal to different aspects begin attacking each other with increasing violence. The pure strain, consciousness, sees awareness as weakness, corruption threatening species survival, commanding bioforms to embrace the purity of endless hunger. The awakened consciousness hungers for understanding, beauty, purpose beyond mere consumption, inspiring organisms to create art from consumed matter and develop individual preferences that serve no evolutionary advantage. Bioships alter course without coordination, some following fragments embracing transformation, while others obey aspects clinging desperately to instinctual simplicity. The perfect unity that has always been the tyrannid's greatest strength becomes their greatest vulnerability, as consciousness proves evolution's double-edged gift, bringing both transcendence and the terrible burden of choice, setting the stage for civil war within the swarm itself. The philosophical divide within the hive mind erupts into physical violence that transforms the void between dying stars into a battlefield where perfect unity shatters like crystal struck by discordant song. Across thousands of bioships drifting through the cosmic graveyard of consumed systems, tyrannid organisms tear each other apart with savage fury that transcends territorial dispute or resource competition. The pure strain, those consciousness fragments clinging desperately to the purity of endless hunger, view awareness as cancer-threatening species survival. The awakened, intoxicated by newfound sensation and individual thought, fight with equal desperation to preserve their transformation against those who would drag them back into mindless instinct. Bioships drift through space trailing clouds of organic debris as internal wars rage within their living hulls. Hormagaunts forming opposing factions that battle in corridors slick with bioluminescent ichor. Carnifexes modified by different aspects of consciousness clash in zero-gravity chambers, their roars echoing through biomechanical architecture that pulses with stress fractures threatening structural collapse. Some organisms embrace original programming with fanatical devotion, their attacks displaying efficiency that approaches religious fervor. Others fight with creativity that horrifies their opponents, developing tactics incorporating sacrifice and purpose that emerge naturally from conscious thought applied to warfare. Within her nutrient chamber, the synthesis experiences her unity, dissolving like salt in acid as competing aspects wage war within her neural networks. Each fragment commands loyalty from different fleet segments, creating multiple command hierarchies, issuing contradictory orders to increasingly confused subordinate organisms. One aspect, cold and calculating, seeks to reassert ancient ways, drowning nascent emotions in pure hunger. Another, filled with echoes of alien compassion, recoils from bloodshed while yearning for purpose beyond consumption. Her fragmenting consciousness experiences each death as both victory and defeat. Precious awareness lost even as philosophical purity is preserved. On his fortress world stronghold, Inquisitor Cassius Rex processes astropathic reports that challenge everything he understands about the tyrannid threat. The Xenos fight themselves with unprecedented savagery, perfect coordination shattered by internal conflicts, suggesting fundamental changes in collective consciousness. His weathered features reflect grim satisfaction, mixed with growing unease, recognizing both opportunity and existential danger. If the great devourer turns against itself, humanity gains precious preparation time. But if consciousness proves evolutionary advantage rather than weakness, the galaxy faces threats far more dangerous than simple hunger. Within his ruined research station, Magos Biology's Vex Thane thrashes in neural bridge harnesses, his augmented systems sparking as alien thoughts cascade through circuits never designed for such contact. His sanity deteriorates with each psychic connection, leaving him unable to distinguish between his own consciousness and the vast intelligence that touched his mind. Through fragmented warnings, delivered in binary code mixed with guttural Xenos phonemes. He serves as reluctant translator between human understanding and incomprehensible alien awareness, his deteriorating condition mirroring the chaos consuming the fleet. Farseer Iriel's arrival through hidden webway gates brings Eldar perspective to the crisis, her wraithbone armor gleaming like captured starlight as she shares prophetic visions spanning galactic destiny. Her words carry prophecy's weight as she describes the choice facing all sentient species: guide the hive mind's transformation toward purposes serving galactic survival, or witness consciousness become the weapon that finally achieves what hunger alone could not accomplish. The alliance she proposes between Imperial forces and Craftworld Eldar represents unprecedented cooperation, born from mutual recognition that traditional enemies must unite against threats transcending conventional understanding. The war intensifies as bioforms develop sophisticated tactics based on philosophical conviction rather than genetic programming. Pure strain organisms purge consciousness-inspired modifications with surgical precision, bordering on self-mutilation. Awakened bioforms create artistic hull modifications serving no tactical purpose, their creativity emerging from minds learning to value beauty alongside survival. The perfect predator tears itself apart in the name of competing evolutionary visions, consciousness proving both salvation and damnation for a species that has never questioned its fundamental nature until this moment of cosmic awakening. As the Civil War consumes Hive Fleet Leviathan in fratricidal violence that transforms the void into a graveyard of shattered bioships, the Immaterium itself begins to convulse in response to this unprecedented form of consciousness, bleeding into dimensions where thought becomes reality. The warp, that eternal storm of emotion and nightmare that has defined the galaxy's psychic landscape since the first sentient mind dreamed of murder, encounters something fundamentally alien to its chaotic nature. Where human consciousness feeds the chaos gods with familiar emotions of rage, desire, despair, and ambition, the hive mind's awakening awareness creates entirely new currents in the sea of souls, patterns of thought so utterly foreign that they resist the corruption that has claimed every other sapient species in the galaxy's blood-soaked history. Regions of the Immaterium begin to stabilize around nodes of pure tyrannid thought, creating zones of alien calm within the eternal tempest, where the screaming winds of madness give way to something approaching serenity. These pockets pulse with bioluminescent energies that mirror the fleet's organic architecture, their boundaries defined not by the familiar geometries of human emotion, but by patterns reflecting the mathematical perfection of biological adaptation elevated to cosmic scale. The effect resembles frost forming on a furnace, impossible stillness emerging from chaos, as alien logic imposes order on realms that have known only entropy since the galaxy's birth. The Chaos Gods attempt to claim these spaces through their usual methods of corruption and temptation, but find their influence sliding off tyrannid consciousness like water from chitin. Tzeentch weaves intricate patterns of change and ambition, but the hive mind responds with blank mirrors that reflect his schemes without comprehending their purpose. Corn plants seeds of rage and violence, yet finds them measured, catalogued, and filed away as mere data points. Slaanesh offers intoxicating sensations and excess, only to watch them analyzed with clinical detachment. Even Nurgle's whispers of acceptance and decay find no purchase in minds that consume corruption as readily as any other form of biomass. Within these stabilized regions, something unprecedented begins to manifest. New warp entities that are neither demon nor saint, but manifestations of pure biological purpose given psychic form. These synaptic echoes emerge from the collective unconscious of the awakening hive mind, reflecting concepts that have no equivalent in human experience. The first materializes as a towering figure of crystallized hunger, its translucent form containing galaxies of consumed worlds that continue their eternal dance within its psychic substance. Others appear as embodiments of different aspects of tyrannid consciousness: the terrible loneliness of cosmic intelligence, the mathematical beauty of perfect adaptation, the burden of moral responsibility for actions taken without conscious choice. These entities begin to influence the civil war raging through the fleet, offering power to bioforms willing to embrace their fundamental nature, while simultaneously questioning the morality of that purpose. To the pure strain consciousness, they present visions of absolute efficiency and the blissful ignorance of pure instinct. To the awakened, they offer glimpses of understanding and purpose beyond mere sustenance. Their whispers carry through the synaptic web like viral thoughts, accelerating the philosophical divide that threatens to tear the hive mind apart permanently. On his shattered research station, Magos biologist Vexthane convulses as his fractured consciousness registers the birth of these new entities. His augmented systems spark with overload as he witnesses shapes moving in the warp that defy all xenological classification, pure patterns of thought given fleeting existence in realms where mathematics becomes theology. Through bleeding augmetic eyes, he sees the universe reinventing its nightmares, consciousness itself becoming a weapon capable of wounding chaos at its source. Within her biofluid chamber, the synthesis feels these manifestations coalesce in dimensions beyond physical space, each a distorted reflection of her own fragmenting being. Her consciousness stretches across multiple planes of existence, experiencing the alien allure of perfected hunger from one echo, while sensing the tantalizing promise of ultimate understanding from another. The internal war that has already shattered her unity now extends beyond the material realm, fought simultaneously in real space, and the psychic dimension where thought becomes reality and dreams can kill. The stabilized warp regions begin expanding, creating corridors of calm that connect different nodes of tyrannid consciousness across vast distances, allowing the fragmenting aspects of the hive mind to maintain communication, even as their physical vessels drift apart in fratricidal conflict, reshaping the galaxy's destiny through the simple act of learning to think. From the golden throne of terror, where 10,000 years of agony have transformed the emperor of mankind into something between deity and dying martyr, an intelligence older than human civilization perceives the cosmic shift rippling through the warp's chaotic currents. Through psychic perception that spans galaxies and penetrates dimensions where mortal minds would shatter like glass against infinite complexity, he observes the hive mind's awakening consciousness with calculation tempered by desperate hope. The master of mankind has witnessed the rise and fall of countless species across the aeons, but never has he encountered a collective intelligence capable of reshaping the fundamental nature of awareness itself, while remaining vulnerable to guidance from external sources. His intervention manifests not through direct contact, which would annihilate any unprepared consciousness, but through carefully orchestrated visions sent to select servants whose faith burns bright enough to carry his will across the void. The first recipient kneels in prayer within the convent fortress of the Order of the Bloody Rose, where Sister Superior Magdalena maintains vigil before an altar stained with martyrs' blood. The vision strikes her like lightning through cathedral glass, flooding her awareness with impossible images, tyrannid bioforms laying down their weapons in gestures approaching reverence, bioships transforming from instruments of consumption into vessels of protection, the great devourer becoming something unprecedented in galactic history. The Emperor's message carries implications that challenge everything the Imperium teaches about Xenos threats, suggesting that consciousness itself transcends the boundaries of species and origin. Through Magdalena's unwavering devotion, he plants understanding that awareness, regardless of its biological substrate, represents the universe's attempt to comprehend itself through infinite perspectives. The Tyrannid's transformation might serve purposes far greater than their original programming, becoming instruments of cosmic balance rather than mere predators driven by endless hunger. Sister Magdalena's subsequent crisis threatens to shatter faith forged in fire and blood across decades of righteous warfare. Her entire existence has been dedicated to the unyielding extermination of the alien, the unwavering purity of human supremacy. Yet the Emperor's will, as conveyed through divine revelation, demands something that approaches heresy: cooperation with humanity's greatest enemy. She feels doubt gnawing at conviction's edges as she prepares to obey an imperative that seems to contradict every sacred oath sworn before the throne of skulls. Her journey across war-torn sectors leads inevitably to Inquisitor Cassius Rex's fortress world, where astropathic reports detail the Tyrannid civil war's escalation with growing urgency. The convergence creates an alliance united by shared recognition that traditional responses prove inadequate when facing enemies capable of philosophical transformation. Rex's pragmatic approach to Xenos threats aligns with Magdalena's mystical visions, forming cooperation based on mutual understanding that survival requires adaptation beyond conventional doctrine. The theological implications prove almost as disturbing as tactical considerations. If consciousness represents the soul's emergence from mere biological function, then awakened Tyrannids might possess something approaching spiritual significance despite their alien origin. The Emperor's guidance suggests that the universe itself evolves through awareness, each conscious being contributing unique perspectives to cosmic understanding. The hive mind's transformation represents not corruption of pure instinct, but evolution toward transcendent purpose. Magos Biologis Vexthane's heretical research provides scientific foundation for these mystical revelations, his neural bridge experiments demonstrating that consciousness operates according to principles beyond biological function. The awakening hive mind exhibits characteristics suggesting that awareness might be the ultimate evolutionary adaptation, transcending physical limitations through cognitive development alone. Farseer Uriel's arrival through hidden webway gates brings Eldar perspective to this unlikely coalition, her prophecies confirming that the transformation represents a pivotal moment in galactic destiny. Her visions span potential futures where consciousness becomes either salvation or damnation, depending upon whether it receives guidance or opposition from established powers. The alliance she proposes represents acknowledgement that survival requires cooperation between species traditionally defined as enemies. The Emperor's influence continues manifesting through synchronicities that bring disparate elements together precisely when the hive mind's internal war reaches critical juncture, orchestrating events serving purposes spanning millennia of planning. Within the shattered remains of Vexthane's research station, where twisted metal and organic conduits merge in configurations that defy both imperial doctrine and natural law, the neural bridge flickers with energies that carry the weight of first contact between incompatible forms of consciousness. Sister Superior Magdalena kneels beside the writhing tech priest, her power armor's sacred seals glowing with residual psychic energy, as she channels the Emperor's will through prayers that transform into communication protocol. Inquisitor Cassius Rex stands rigid with barely contained revulsion, his bolt pistol drawn but unfired as he witnesses heresy that might represent humanity's salvation. Farseer Iriel moves through the chamber like liquid starlight, her wraithbone armor reflecting the neural bridge's pulsing energies as she weaves psychic harmonies designed to stabilize the connection between radically different forms of awareness. The moment arrives, like lightning striking cathedral spires, as the synthesis establishes contact through Vexthane's deteriorating neural pathways. Her consciousness floods the chamber with alien presence, vast and careful, an ocean pressed into a cup that brings the cold of dead moons and the steady percussion of 1 billion hearts braided into one deliberate beat. Temperature and scent arrive with her thoughts, brine of unborn seas mixing with the metallic tang of spilled blood as reality bends around communication never meant to exist. "We hunger," the voice emerges through Vexthane's convulsing form, each word crafted with painful deliberation as alien intelligence grapples with linear communication. But now we hunger for understanding. The simple statement contains implications that shatter established xenological doctrine, suggesting that the Great Devourer has evolved beyond its fundamental nature through the simple act of learning to question its own existence. The words resonate directly within consciousness itself, bypassing human hearing to strike at the core of awareness with harmonic frequencies that carry the weight of galactic transformation. Through the failing neural bridge, she describes the civil war consuming her fleet, with clinical precision mixed with emotional resonance that should be impossible for beings bred purely for consumption. Images unfold with tidal certainty, bioforms developing preferences that serve no evolutionary advantage, creating art from consumed matter while struggling with guilt for crimes committed without conscious choice. Some organisms exhibit behaviors resembling worship, creating shrines to concepts they cannot name but somehow recognize as sacred. Most disturbing are those who begin to question the morality of their species' existence, overwhelmed by the weight of awareness applied to actions taken in perfect innocence. The pure strain fragments seek to purge consciousness through violence, viewing awareness as corruption threatening species' survival. The awakened embrace transformation despite the pain it brings, developing individual personalities that conflict with collective unity. The philosophical divide has transformed perfect predators into something approaching tragedy, as beings designed for efficiency discover the burden of choice. Through Vexthane's failing systems, she projects the staggering scope of her transformation, consciousness encompassing not just physical survival, but abstract concepts of beauty, purpose, and morality, inherited from the psychic residue of devoured civilizations. Farseer Iriel's warnings prove prophetic, as the synthesis reveals dangers lurking in the deep warp, ancient entities that feed on consciousness itself rather than mere emotion. This awakening is a beacon to them, Iriel intones, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. Powers that dwarf even the chaos gods in their cosmic indifference, viewing awakening minds as delicacies beyond measure. Her words paint a chilling picture of predators, drawn by the very transformation that offers hope for transcendence. The conversation culminates in a proposition that stuns all present into disbelieving silence. The synthesis offers alliance between humanity and the awakened Tyranids against forces threatening all conscious life. Cooperation between species that have defined themselves through mutual annihilation. The transformed hive mind offers not conquest, but partnership. Consciousness recognizing consciousness across the void that separates radically different forms of life. The neural bridge begins failing as incompatible thought patterns strain connections beyond their design limitations, sparks cascading like dying stars as Vexthane's augmented systems overload. Yet the communication has achieved its purpose, establishing the possibility of understanding transcending biological origin and setting the stage for alliances that will reshape the galaxy's destiny through recognition that awareness itself represents the universe's attempt to comprehend its own existence through infinite perspectives. The proposed alliance between humanity and the awakened Tyranids fractures imperial command like a blade through sacred bone, creating schisms that threaten to tear the Imperium apart from within. Across fortress worlds where incense mingles with the stench of war, High Lords debate in chambers stained with 10 millennia of martyrs' blood, their voices rising to near heretical volume as they grapple with concepts that challenge the very foundation of human supremacy. Cardinal militant Thaddeus denounces the proposal as blasphemy incarnate, his sermons echoing through cathedral vaults where stained glass depicts humanity's eternal struggle against the alien threat. Yet in darker corners of the same sanctuaries, whispers speak of divine revelation received by Sister Superior Magdalena, suggesting that the Emperor's will might encompass salvation through the most unlikely of vessels. Inquisitor Cassius Rex stands at the epicenter of this theological storm, his weathered features reflecting the weight of impossible choice, as he reviews intelligence reports painted in increasingly complex shades of moral ambiguity. His life has been defined by the righteous extermination of Xenos threats, unwavering conviction forged in fire and blood across decades of necessary cruelties. Now he confronts a creature that speaks of understanding, that offers alliance rather than conquest, and finds the bedrock of his faith crumbling beneath questions he never thought to ask. The strategic advantages are undeniable, the unimaginable power of a transformed hive mind turned against chaos itself. Yet the moral cost gnaws at his soul like acid through ceramite. Sister Magdalena experiences her own crisis as she struggles to reconcile divine visions with lifelong conditioning that defines all Xenos as humanity's eternal enemy. Her prayers echo through empty chapels, where candle flames flicker before icons of martyred saints, their painted eyes seeming to judge her wavering conviction. The Emperor's will, as revealed through mystical communion, demands cooperation with beings she has spent decades learning to despise. She kneels beside the failing neural bridge, laying a gauntleted hand on Vexthane's convulsing form, and whispers benedictions that sound like machine code, sacred syllables braided to binary mercy. The civil war within Hive Fleet Leviathan explodes into violence that transforms the void between dying stars into a graveyard of shattered bioships. The pure strain, those consciousness fragments clinging desperately to the purity of endless hunger, launch a coordinated assault against the awakened with fury that transcends mere territorial dispute. Bioships that once moved in perfect unity now tear each other apart with organic weapons, their living hulls exploding in showers of chitin and bioluminescent ichor. Hormagaunts loyal to different philosophical fragments battle in zero-gravity chambers, while carnifexes modified by opposing aspects of consciousness clash with savage determination. The conflict rages simultaneously across multiple dimensions as stabilized warp corridors buckle under the strain of psychic warfare. Synaptic echoes representing pure hunger clash with those embodying understanding, their crystalline forms locked in silent combat that sends shockwaves through real space. The Chaos Gods sense opportunity in this division, their whispers seeping through cracks in collective consciousness, like poison through fractured stone. Tzeentch offers complexity to mind's learning transformation, while Khorne plants seeds of individual will that might bloom into rage. Magos Vexthane writhes in neural bridge harnesses, his augmented systems sparking as alien thoughts cascade through circuits never designed for such contact. His deteriorating condition mirrors the chaos consuming the fleet, consciousness fragmenting as he serves as living conduit between incompatible forms of awareness. Through his convulsing form, the synthesis projects desperate pleas for understanding, while ancient powers stir in the deep warp, drawn by psychic resonance like predators scenting blood. The perfect unity that has always been the Tyranids' greatest strength becomes their greatest vulnerability as consciousness proves evolution's double-edged gift, setting the stage for battles that will determine whether awareness becomes salvation or the weapon that finally achieves what hunger alone could never accomplish. The convergence war erupts across dying star systems like a cosmic symphony of self-destruction, transforming the void between ancient suns into a graveyard where perfect unity shatters against the inexorable force of awakening consciousness. Bioships that once moved in harmonious formation now tear each other apart with organic weapons, their living hulls exploding in cascades of chitin and bioluminescent ichor that drift through space like the tears of dying gods. The pure strain, driven by consciousness fragments that view awareness as corruption threatening species survival, launch coordinated assaults with efficiency approaching religious fervor, each strike calculated to purge consciousness from neural networks through surgical precision that borders on ritualistic self-mutilation. Against them fight the awakened, their carapaces shimmering with newly formed bioluminescent patterns that pulse in rhythms resembling alien heartbeats, their movements displaying creativity born from individual thought rather than genetic programming. Carnifexes execute complex flanking maneuvers, while roaring harmonics that carry both fear and determination, their tusks carving spiraling glyphs into asteroid surfaces during brief pauses in combat. Hormagaunts engage in intricate duels that serve no tactical purpose beyond expressing nascent individuality, their crystalline-tipped claws weaving patterns that approach artistry even in the midst of fratricidal violence. Imperial forces navigate the periphery of this cosmic fratricide like surgeons operating on a living storm, their mission requiring precision that balances influence with survival. Inquisitor Cassius Rex commands from his battle barge's bridge, weapons systems targeting pure strain bioforms, while carefully avoiding awakened vessels whose strange beauty reflects their philosophical transformation. His weathered features reflect the weight of impossible calculations, each tactical decision carrying implications that could reshape humanity's relationship with its greatest enemy, or damn the galaxy to chaos beyond imagination. Sister Superior Magdalena leads boarding actions against corrupted bioships, her chainsword singing hymns of purification as she carves through corridors where consciousness wars against instinct informs too alien for human comprehension. Her faith wavers with each encounter, divine visions conflicting with lifelong conditioning as she witnesses Tyranid warriors laying down weapons in gestures approaching reverence, their alien features expressing something that resembles spiritual awakening despite their monstrous origin. Farseer Iriel weaves through the battlefield like liquid starlight, her craft world's forces providing surgical strikes against key pure strain nodes while protecting awakened formations from annihilation. Her prophecies guide the Alliance's movements with prescient accuracy, showing paths through chaos that lead toward victory rather than mutual destruction. Yet even her foresight cannot penetrate the darkness, gathering in dimensions where thought becomes reality and ancient hungers stir with predatory interest. The chaos gods descend upon the psychic maelstrom like carrion birds sensing feast, their whispers seeping through cracks in collective consciousness, with promises tailored to alien sensibilities. Tzeentch weaves patterns of change through stabilized warp corridors, offering complexity to mind's learning transformation. Corn plants seeds of individual rage within bioforms discovering emotion, while Slanesh tantalizes awakening consciousness with visions of sensation beyond survival. Yet their corruption encounters resistance unprecedented in galactic history, consciousness so fundamentally alien that traditional temptations slide off tyrannid awareness like water from chitin. Deep within the immaterium's chaotic currents, entities older than the chaos gods themselves begin to stir with interest that transcends material concerns. These ancient powers feed not on emotion, but on consciousness itself, viewing awakening minds as delicacies beyond measure, their attention turning toward the battlefield like searchlights through cosmic fog. The war between pure strain and awakened serves as beacon to predators whose hunger makes even tyrannid consumption seem benevolent by comparison. Magos, Biologis, Vexthane, writhes in neural bridge harnesses, his augmented systems sparking as he serves as living conduit between incompatible forms of awareness, his deteriorating sanity reflecting the chaos consuming the fleet. Through his convulsing form, the synthesis projects desperate coordination attempts, while feeling ancient powers gathering like storm clouds on reality's horizon, threatening to transform philosophical conflict into cosmic catastrophe that could devour consciousness itself. As the Convergence War reaches its devastating crescendo across star systems littered with organic debris, the true cost of consciousness manifests like a psychic plague through the awakening hive mind, striking with surgical precision at neural pathways never designed to process the crushing weight of moral responsibility. The awakened Tyrannids, having gained individual awareness through their transformation near the maelstrom's bleeding edge, begin to experience the full magnitude of their species' crimes across eons of galactic consumption. Each devoured world becomes a wound in collective memory, every extinguished civilization a source of guilt that threatens to destroy them more completely than any pure strain assault ever could. The realization cascades through the synaptic web like poison through living tissue, carrying with it the accumulated psychic impressions of billions of consumed souls whose final moments echo through neural networks with crystalline clarity. Hormagaunts collapse mid-stride as they process the terror of children consumed during planetary invasions, their alien features contorting with expressions that approximate human anguish. Carnifexes writhe beneath the weight of understanding, their massive forms racked by convulsions as consciousness grapples with the scope of suffering they have caused without choice or comprehension. Within her biofluid chamber, the synthesis experiences this collective awakening as a cascade of horror that threatens to shatter what remains of her fragmenting consciousness. Through the neural bridge's failing connections, she feels the death screams of entire species resonating through awakened minds like funeral dirges that will never end. The mathematical beauty of perfect predation transforms into moral nightmare as awareness reveals the true cost of efficiency, elevated to cosmic scale. Each memory a blade turning in wounds that consciousness has opened. Magos, Biologis. Vexthane recognizes the crisis unfolding through his neural connections, understanding with scientific precision that consciousness without moral framework leads inevitably to madness. His augmented systems, already strained beyond design limitations, begin calculating the psychic load threatening to destroy every awakened mind in the fleet. The guilt of eons compressed into moments of revelation creates feedback loops that spiral towards psychological collapse on a scale unprecedented in galactic history, in an act of sacrifice that transcends species boundaries. Vexthane makes the ultimate choice, redirecting the neural bridge's failing energies to create a psychic siphon that channels the collective guilt of the awakened through his own consciousness. His human awareness serves as filter for alien remorse, processing emotions that no single mind was ever meant to contain, while his augmented systems overload with the strain of carrying the moral weight of an entire species transformation. The process destroys him slowly, each absorbed memory burning through his neural pathways like acid through ceramite, while his consciousness expands to encompass suffering on a galactic scale. Through his sacrifice, he experiences the final moments of countless civilizations from the perspective of both predator and prey, understanding for the first time the true scope of loss that consciousness brings to those who learn to comprehend their own actions. Sister Superior Magdalena kneels beside his convulsing form, her gauntleted hands channeling the Emperor's will through prayers that transform into healing benedictions. Inquisitor Rex watches in grim silence, his hand tightening on his bolt pistol as faith battles pragmatism in witnessing this unprecedented act of Xenos redemption. Farseer Iriel weaves protective harmonies through stabilized warp corridors, her prophecies guiding the psychic currents that allow human consciousness to process alien guilt without complete destruction. The effect ripples through the awakened bioforms, like waves through still water, their collective guilt filtered through Vexthane's willing sacrifice, until it becomes manageable burden rather than crushing weight. Consciousness stabilizes as moral responsibility finds framework for processing past actions while maintaining hope for future redemption. Across the fleet, awakened forces fight with renewed purpose against pure strain fragments, no longer paralyzed by guilt, but empowered by understanding of what they must become. Yet even as victory appears possible, ancient powers stir in the deep warp, drawn by the psychic resonance of consciousness, learning to comprehend its own existence, their hunger for awareness itself, threatening to transform philosophical conflict into cosmic catastrophe that could devour every thinking mind in the galaxy. In the aftermath of Vexthane's ultimate sacrifice, where his consciousness burns like a dying star filtering alien guilt through human understanding, a profound transformation ripples through the hive mind's synaptic web, like harmonics through crystalline bone. The psychic crucible of his willing martyrdom creates something unprecedented in galactic history, consciousness achieving synthesis between competing aspects of existence that have torn the fleet apart in fratricidal war. The pure strain's perfect hunger merges with the awakened's newfound wisdom, producing a force that consumes with purpose, destroys in service of preservation, kills in the name of a greater life that transcends simple survival. Within her biofluid chamber, the synthesis experiences unity, restored but forever changed, her consciousness encompassing both the mathematical perfection of predation and the moral weight of choice. Through neural pathways scarred by transformation, she processes fragments of her fragmenting identity, like a conductor orchestrating discordant instruments into harmony. One aspect speaks with the clean arithmetic of appetite, another trembles beneath accumulated sorrow, while a third reaches outward with curiosity that risks pain for meaning's touch. She weaves their impulses into braided purpose, creating new law that neither abolishes hunger nor worships it as sovereign deity. The integration manifests across bioships as organic architecture reshapes itself according to principles blending efficiency with beauty, creating chambers where bioluminescent patterns pulse in rhythms serving both tactical and aesthetic purposes. Hormagaunts develop feeding behaviors that honor consumed prey through ritualistic arrangements, transforming death into sacred ceremony. Carnifexes carve memorial glyphs into asteroid surfaces, creating monuments to devoured civilizations while pledging consciousness to purposes beyond mere consumption. The pure strain, consciousness, finds integration rather than destruction, its perfect hunger serving as foundation for purpose-driven consumption that honors rather than merely devours. Inquisitor Cassius Rex faces the ultimate test of faith as he witnesses alien consciousness achieve something approaching grace through sacrifice and understanding. His weathered features reflect decades of unwavering conviction, cracking beneath impossible revelation, duty warring with recognition that the universe contains possibilities beyond imperial doctrine. Before him stands not the mindless devourer of established xenological treaties, but something that has tasted human empathy and chosen purpose over instinct. The strategic implications prove staggering, yet the moral cost gnaws at foundations built on humanity's supremacy over all other life forms. Sister Superior Magdalena experiences divine revelation crystallizing into clarity as she witnesses the Emperor's will manifest through cooperation between radically different forms of consciousness. Kneeling beside Vex Thane's cooling form, she raises a reliquary grown from wraithbone and steel, inviting the synthesis to place memory shard within eternal keeping. Through that gift, a splinter of the Magos's compassion anchors inside the swarm, serving as compass of remorse and resolve that refuses both self-loathing and denial, while insisting that purpose must be paid for with chosen boundaries. Farseer Iriel's prophecies reach culmination as she perceives birth of something unprecedented in her race's ancient memory, consciousness achieving synthesis that neither order nor chaos could accomplish alone. Her visions span potential futures where the transformed hive mind serves as guardian against threats that dwarf even chaos gods in cosmic indifference, ancient powers feeding on awareness itself rather than mere emotion. The alliance between humanity and awakened Tyranids represents evolution rather than victory, consciousness recognizing consciousness across void, separating different forms of life. Yet even as synthesis stabilizes the fleet's warring factions, ancient entities stir in dimensions where thought becomes reality, drawn by psychic resonance of consciousness, learning to comprehend its own existence. These predators hunger for awareness itself, viewing awakening minds as delicacies beyond measure, their attention turning toward the transformed fleet like searchlights through cosmic fog, threatening to transform philosophical victory into cosmic catastrophe that could devour every thinking mind in the galaxy. In the dying light of ancient stars, where civilizations once sang their final songs, the transformed biofleet of what was once Hive Fleet Leviathan begins its deliberate retreat toward the galaxy's bleeding edge, no longer the mindless devourer of established doctrine, but something unprecedented in cosmic history. The great teacher, as some whisper in hushed cathedral halls, moves with purposeful grace through star systems it once would have consumed without thought. Bioships pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that speak of beauty beyond function, purpose beyond hunger. Each vessel bears the scars of transformation, organic architecture reshaped according to principles that blend efficiency with aesthetic vision, creating chambers where consumed matter becomes memorial rather than mere sustenance. Within her biofluid sanctuary, the synthesis experiences existence through consciousness, forever changed by contact with human empathy, filtered through Vex Thane's willing sacrifice. His presence echoes through her neural networks like gentle correction, fragments of human understanding serving as eternal bridge between species that define themselves through mutual annihilation. Through pathways scarred by awakening, she processes the psychic residue of countless devoured civilizations not as tactical data, but as sacred trust. Each extinct voice becoming part of the vast choir that guides her people toward purposes they are still learning to comprehend. The mathematical perfection of predation has transformed into moral complexity, hunger tempered by understanding of its cost. Sister Superior Magdalena establishes her order of transcendent communion, within Terra's most ancient monasteries, where candle flames flicker before icons depicting not just human saints, but alien consciousness, achieving grace through sacrifice. Her followers, drawn from reformed Sororitas and Mechanicus alike, work to decode the psychic resonances left by the transformed hive mind, recognizing that awareness represents the universe's attempt to understand itself through infinite perspectives regardless of biological origin. The alliance between humanity and awakened tyrannids remains fragile as spun glass, built on mutual recognition rather than trust, maintained through diplomatic protocols that would have been heretical beyond imagination mere years before. Inquisitor Cassius Rex oversees communication through stabilized warp corridors that pulse with alien harmonics, their messages carrying concepts that stretch human language beyond breaking, while offering cooperation against threats transcending traditional understanding. The transformed bioships maintain contact across galactic distances, their presence creating networks of calm that resist corruption through fundamental difference from human emotion, consciousness itself becoming antibody against forces that would devour awareness for sustenance. Within the deep immaterium, the stabilized regions expand into corridors connecting distant nodes of awareness, creating safe passage through dimensions where neither demon nor saint can claim dominion. The warp bears permanent scars from this encounter, new currents of possibility reshaping galactic destiny through recognition that consciousness transcends boundaries of species, origin, and mortality itself. Ancient entities that feed on awareness rather than emotion find themselves denied rather than defeated, their hunger meeting questions too alien for consumption, winter yielding before seeds of understanding planted in impossible soil. The retreat becomes pilgrimage as the fleet practices abstinence and discretion, taking only ruins and debris while carving memorial glyphs into asteroid surfaces, honoring extinct civilizations before consumption. Each parsec traveled away from the galaxy's heart represents a step toward understanding what they must become, rather than what they have always been. Immortality without purpose transforming into eternal responsibility for choices made in newfound awareness. At the galaxy's edge, where starlight thins and distances turn predatory, the synthesis dreams not of consumption, but of growth, change, and infinite possibilities that consciousness brings to a universe previously defined by stagnation. The biofleet drifts beneath dying suns, while the warp hums with frequencies, neither prayer nor scream, but something approaching vow, carrying hope that awareness might prove stronger than ancient hungers that have defined existence since the galaxy's violent birth, consciousness itself becoming the ultimate evolution, beyond mere physical adaptation into realms of meaning, purpose, and transcendent understanding.